So you've just picked up a Steam Deck and you're looking for some good games to try out on there. There's so many options when it comes to games on the Steam Deck. I'm talking emulators, AAA games, indie games. You have options for days. Like, think of it like a PC essentially, and how you can use a PC and all the kinds of games that you can play on a PC. You can pretty much get most of them on here. Not all of them, but you can get a lot of games that you can play on your PC on the Steam Deck as well. So in today's video, I'm going to be going over 14 of those games that I've put together over the time that I've owned the Steam Deck. These are all games that you can download directly from the Steam store. So no emulators, nothing crazy, nothing different, no unsupported games, no games off the Epic store, nothing like that. I'm gonna be giving you guys all my best settings for graphics and performance, and finding that perfect balance to get the best gameplay experience on the Steam Deck. Something that you guys should note before I go ahead and start talking about these games is I've got a 2TB SSD replacement inside my Steam Deck. I took out the 512GB SSD and replaced it with that. All the games that I'll be talking about will be played off of that SSD. Alright, Spiderman Remastered is going to be the first on this list. So this was one of the very first games that I picked up on the Steam Deck, and I'd already finished the main story on PS5, but decided to pick it up again just to experience it on my PC and on the go with the Steam Deck. I've definitely been playing it a lot more on the deck than on my PC, just based on that portability factor. PlayStation has also been porting a lot of its exclusives to PC, and honestly, I've been loving it. You'll actually notice a few of them throughout this list, and I'll only be adding more with time. The game is fully compatible and verified to function well on the deck, and I can definitely confirm that. For the best gameplay performance though, you want to set the game's display settings to the max at 1280 by 800, turn on VSync, and then enable AMD FSR 2.1. Next up, you want to set the game's graphics to medium, and then cap the screen's refresh rate at 40 Hz. This allows the game to function fairly consistently at close to 40 frames per second. For most games I've played, 40 frames per second remains the sweet spot for finding a nice balance between graphics quality and the smoothness of your gameplay. In the game, you play as an experienced Peter Parker, who is also Spider-Man fighting big crime bosses and villains in Marvel's New York City. I've always enjoyed the web swinging and combat gameplay, which for me can be very addicting due to how much fun it is. You've also got different suits to pick from and so many gadgets and superpowers to play with. I've found that it's not a super challenging game once you figure out the controls, and there's a good amount of things to do in the game world to keep you busy for a while. My favorite thing to do in the game has got to be the web swinging throughout the city, performing all kinds of stunts. I haven't gotten through the whole game just yet, but I've definitely gotten through a lot of it, put in the most time that I've put into any game on the deck so far. The next game on my list is the second entry into the Spider-Man series, and this one was just recently ported over to PC from PlayStation. It's also verified and fully functional on the Steam Deck, and I've also finished this on the PS5, but I love the Spider-Man series, so I picked it up again, and I've loved playing it on the handheld as well. For the best gameplay performance on this, I usually set the display settings to the maximum resolution, turn on VSync, and also enable AMD FSR 2.1, which is pretty similar to what I do with the first game. As for the graphics preset, I usually set that to very low and then cap the screen's refresh rate at 40 Hz. For me, this has provided the best experience on the deck so far. I usually don't expect to use high graphics settings on the deck since it's got a small screen and things look good enough on it for on-the-go gameplay, even with low graphics presets. With those settings in place, I'm able to play the game smoothly between 30 and 40 frames per second, but it usually stays closer to 40 frames, which is what I usually want. In this sequel, you play as Miles Morales, who is a newly turned Spider-Man learning the ropes from Peter Parker. He's then left to fend for New York City by himself while Peter leaves for a bit. In the sequel, you also have access to a new source of power that's honestly so overpowered, but also so much fun to use in the game. There's also new suits and gadgets to pick from, and the combat system is very similar to the first game, but there's still some new moves and finisher animations to use in the latest installment. With this one, I've put in a lot less play time, but I'm already halfway through the main story, so the game is not long, but it's definitely fun the entire playthrough. Mad Max is up next, and this has got to be one of the best games I've played on the Steam Deck so far. This is another game that's verified to function well on the Steam Deck, and it doesn't disappoint. I got this one during a sale on the Steam store for dirt cheap. In fact, it might be the best value I've gotten for a game on the Steam Deck so far. This is another game that I also completed a few years back on the PS4, but it was so good, I had to play it again on the Steam Deck, and it's been great so far. For the best gameplay performance with this, I usually set the display settings to the maximum, turn on VSync, and then use the normal graphics preset. With this, I'm able to maintain a steady 60 frames per second during gameplay. In the game, you play as Max, who has lost his family and then becomes a reluctant hero and survivor in a world that has now become a wasteland run by warlords, with the main villain being the warlord Scrotus. Resources like gun ammunition and gas are scarce, and you have to manage your supply well, or you're left with nothing but hand combat most of the time. Melee combat with hands or weapon is super fluid and very immersive. There's also vehicle combat, which is a major part of the gameplay, and it's also fun with weapons like harpoons and car upgrades that turn your car into a weapon in battle. There's a lot of side missions and other things to do in the game besides the main story, and honestly, I spend most of my time in the game driving around to different locations, completing various missions. The driving has to be hands down one of my favorite things to do, especially with the ability to use Nitro's boost. As for Mad Max, I've put in a decent amount of playtime, and I'm already halfway through the main story. It's definitely up there for some of the best games I've played on the Steam Deck, and I definitely encourage you guys to check it out if you've never played it, or if you just want to replay this game again. It's a masterpiece. Hogwarts Legacy was just released, and it's the newest game on my Steam Deck. Before release, it was already confirmed to be verified and fully functional on the Steam Deck, so I had to pick it up. This is one of those games that I picked up for full price because, it just released, and I picked it up to experience it on my PC as well as on my Steam Deck. So it's like buying the same game and playing it on multiple platforms. Honestly, I didn't expect the game to handle very well on the Steam Deck, but it does with the right settings. I get close to a steady 40 frames per second, which is just perfect for me. Like the other games, I have the resolution for this set to the max, turn on VSync, enable AMD FSR2 with a balanced profile, and then I set the graphics quality to low. Doing these allow the game to run smoothly at close to 40 frames per second, which is awesome. Sometimes it's actually able to hold 40 frames per second consistently before dipping. Hogwarts Legacy is based on the Harry Potter novels and movies, and so you get to explore the wizarding world in this action role-playing game. You control a student at Hogwarts, which is a school of magic, and learn magic tricks and skills to help fight different villains you'll encounter throughout the game. There's no physical or melee combat, and every battle has to be fought using magic. For me, this game has brought back a lot of nostalgia from watching the Harry Potter movies when I was younger. I'm so used to physical combat systems in most games I play, but the wand combat has been a welcome change to say the least. You can also customize your character's appearance, change outfits, and even fly on a broom in the game. Besides that, there's so much more to do in game as well, from attending classes to completing side missions and a lot more, which I'm still finding out. I haven't put in a ton of hours yet into this one, but it's definitely got me playing it a lot more than I expected. So far, I've played some of it on my PC, but overall, I've put in a lot more hours on the Steam Deck because of that portability factor again. Next up on my list is Red Dead Redemption, and this one is one of the best games I've ever played, period. Doesn't matter where it's been. It's one of those games which turned out to be a masterpiece, so I just had to buy it again on the Steam Deck as soon as it was on sale. I'm sure most of you might have already played this one on a different platform, but being able to play it on a handheld has been a whole new experience, and I'm loving it. It's got a playable status for the Steam Deck as opposed to the verified status of the other games from earlier, but that does not at all affect gameplay in any way. It just means you'll need to use the on-screen keyboard to go through the Rockstar sign-in page, and once you're through there, it'll be just like any other verified game on the Steam Deck. For the best gameplay performance, I usually set my resolution to max, turn on VSync, and finally, I lock the screen's refresh rate to 40 Hz. With all of those in place, I'm able to actually maintain a steady 40 frames per second. And the best part to me is I'm still able to do that with some pretty nice graphics presets. This game has a single story mode and a multiplayer mode called Red Dead Online, which can be played with an active internet connection. This is also needed for saving gameplay progress to the cloud, but RDR2 does not save to the Steam cloud like the others, but onto Rockstar's servers instead. Red Dead Redemption 2 is the story of Arthur Morgan and the Vandalin gang on the run across the United States at the beginning of the modern age. You play as Arthur, who happens to be a skilled gunslinger and also the hero of the game. There's so much to do in RDR2, like I mean so much in the game, from hunting animals to completing some pretty fun and crazy side missions. There's all kinds of combat in the game, like hand, gun, and even some bow and arrow action. My favorite thing to do is definitely completing the 1 million side quests in the game, which I actually never did when I first played the game a few years ago. I've already completed the main story of RDR2 on the PS4, so I decided I'd take my time with it on the Steam Deck. So definitely not in a rush to get through this one. I mostly enjoy completing side missions like I said and just exploring the world in general. So far I haven't tried the online mode yet, but I might give it a try as soon as I get through the main story. Days Gone is up next, and this is a super underrated game which I played but never got to finish on the PS5. Picking it up on a deck is giving me the opportunity to have another go at it and probably finish it this time. The game also has a verified status on Steam, meaning it's a perfect match for the Steam Deck. For the best gameplay performance, I usually lock the screen at 40Hz refresh rate, set the max resolution, turn on VSync, and then make sure the game is using the medium graphics preset. This allows the game to run smoothly with a consistent 40 frames per second and some pretty decent graphics quality. Honestly, I love how well it runs on the deck, and now I might actually finish the game. Days Gone is an open world action adventure single player game with no multiplayer mode. If you're like me and enjoy post-apocalyptic survivor games, then you'll definitely love Days Gone as well. In the game, you play as Deacon St. John, who happens to be a bounty hunter, survivor, and the hero of the game in a post-pandemic world filled with lunatics and zombie-type creatures called Freakers. Like Mad Max, you're gonna have to be smart with how you spend your very limited resources like ammo and gas. You also have to scavenge throughout the open world for all sorts of things like parts, weapons, and a whole lot more. Unlike Mad Max though, you will be riding a bike throughout Days Gone. Bikes can also be customized and upgraded as you progress throughout the game. Like I said before, the game is filled with zombie-type creatures called Freakers, so there's going to be a lot of stealth gameplay required in this one. I haven't played very much of it yet, but that's only because I'm still trying to finish most of the other games that I got before picking this one up. One thing I'll tell you though is that it's definitely at the top of the list of games that I can't wait to finish on the Steam Deck. The next game is The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, and this is one game that I've been looking for a good chance to play for a while now. It went on a big sale recently on Steam and even got an upgrade, so I decided to add it to my library ASAP. The game is verified to function perfectly on the deck, and it does so pretty well. From within the settings menu, I use the maximum resolution, turn on VSync, enable FSR2, and use the auto settings. For the graphics preset, I use the lowest and then lock the screen's refresh rates to 40 Hz. All of these allow the game to run between 30 and 40 frames per second, which to me works well enough. In the game, you play as Geralt of Rivia, who happens to be a mercenary monster slayer. The open world is filled with a variety of monsters which you'll need magic and melee combat skills to fight. There's also a war going on between different factions, which you're pretty much stuck between as the game goes on. The main story requires completing a contract where you track down Ciri, who's supposed to be a living weapon with the power to alter the shape of the world. The game world is large and there's lots to do in it before completing the game. You can craft items, upgrade, buy weapons, and even explore the open world on horseback. Learning the controls in combat also hasn't been as easy as some of the other games on this list. Movements are also a little clunky in comparison to some of the other games I've played, but I can definitely get used to it. There's also a lot of information to take in to fully learn and understand the game, and I feel like this one is going to take some patience. Up next, we've got Yakuza Like a Dragon, and this game is really unique in so many ways. It's an action role-playing game that I've really been enjoying on the Steam Deck so far. It's also been verified and confirmed to be perfectly compatible with the Steam Deck, so it uses Steam Cloud saves as well. For performance and graphics, I use the maximum resolution, turn on VSync, lock the screen at 40 Hz, and then set graphics preset to high. This allows the game to run fairly consistently at 40 frames per second, which is just great. In the game, you play as Ichiban Kasuga in Tokyo, Japan, where you fight to make your way from being a low-ranked underdog to becoming the top dog. Your character has just gone through betrayal, and now he's on a mission to discover the truth behind it. The game uses a turn-based combat system, which was new to me before playing this. Both your character and enemies can use pretty much anything within reach as a weapon during combat, and some of the dialogues are voiceless, which to me is kind of weird. It's kind of different. Another weird thing that I noticed about the game is how long the cutscenes are. They can sometimes feel like a movie, I'll be honest with you guys. It's one of those games that I've wanted to play for a while now, but never found the time to play on console, so I'm glad it runs well on the Steam Deck. Kenna Bridge of Spirits is up next, and this was a recent Steam sale pickup for me. I wanted to pick it up on the PS5, but ended up skipping out on it when it released a while back, just so I could experience it on PC whenever it did arrive there. Once I saw it was on sale on the Steam store, I knew it was time to finally play the game. It's also one of those games I'd rather play on a handheld, since it definitely won't be at the top of my list if I had to play it on a console. This one, like other PlayStation exclusives on the deck, is fully verified and compatible to function well. I'm able to get the game to run at 40 frames per second consistently using some modified settings. Usually I set the resolution to max, turn on VSync, and enable DirectX 12. Like most of the other games, I also lock the screen's refresh rate to 40 Hz and then use the lowest graphics preset. In the game, you play as Kenna, who is a spirit guide that goes through the game world collecting these magical creatures called the Rot. I haven't really gotten deep into the game yet, so there's still much for me to learn and discover. The combat gameplay is nice so far, but definitely not my favorite of a lot of the games that I've played. In the game, you've got a staff for melee combat, and you've got weapons which can also be thrown at enemies for some ranged combat. I think the biggest thing for me with the game is the music and just how cool the game world looks, and definitely the Rot. The next games I'll be talking about are from the Assassin's Creed franchise. I've already played a lot of the games from the series on console, so I decided to only get the ones that I missed out on. I've always enjoyed the different parts of history I get to explore in each game, which for me is the biggest thing about the Assassin's Creed franchise. Assassin's Creed games are usually packed with a lot of side missions, and they tend to be long and repetitive, so it can get boring for some people. I've also found in time that the Creed games are actually kind of perfect for the Steam Deck due to its portability. Personally, I like being able to take my time to play through games, and if I get bored, I play something else for a while and then come back again whenever I'm feeling it. And with how large Assassin's Creed games are, I think they're perfect for the Steam Deck. I picked up Assassin's Creed Origins, Odyssey, Rogue, and 3 Remastered. Now, all of these have the same playable status on the Steam Deck, so they're not 100% compatible with it, but that does not affect gameplay in any way at all. What it really means is you have to pull up this on-screen keyboard to enter your Ubisoft account login information, since the Creed games use Ubisoft service for cloud saves. Once you're through the sign-in page, it's all about getting the settings right for the best gameplay experience. All of the Assassin's Creed games have a very similar gameplay style with a few outliers here and there, but the idea of the game remains the same. So if you like a few of them, there's a good chance you'll like some of the others. I feel like the main thing that differentiates each game in the series is the part of history you're exploring and everything that comes with that. Each game gives you a variety of melee weapons to choose from and use, as well as ranged weapons in hand combat. As an assassin, your job is going to involve a lot of stealth and parkour gameplay, and these are some of my favorite things about games from the franchise. On Assassin's Creed Origins, I'm able to play with high graphics settings and still maintain 40 frames per second for smooth gameplay. To get to that point, I usually set the resolution to max, VSync to on, lock the screen's refresh rate to 40 Hz, and then use the high graphics preset. Whatever you do, avoid setting VSync to adaptive or you won't get steady 40 frames per second from what I've noticed. Origins is the 10th major installment in the series, coming right before Odyssey. You play as a Magi named Bayek of Siwa in ancient Egypt, completing quests to progress through the main story. You can choose to roam the open world of the game on foot, horseback, camelback, horse-drawn vehicles, or boats. You can also dive underwater and explore lakes and rivers throughout ancient Egypt. And the side missions typically involve rescuing prisoners, defeating enemies, collecting items, or investigating items of interest. I use the same settings for Assassin's Creed Odyssey as I use for Origins, and this also is able to hold that 40 frames per second sweet spot with some pretty nice gameplay graphics. I've also found that both of these Creed games are very similar in gameplay mechanics, how characters are equipped, and a whole lot more. So far, I've enjoyed playing both and continue to bounce between them all the time. I've definitely put in a bit more time into Origins, but I'm sure I'll finish both games eventually. While Origins is based in Egypt, Odyssey takes you on a quest across ancient Greece. Both stories to me have been quite interesting so far, and I've been enjoying the whole gameplay a lot. At the beginning of Odyssey, you select to play as either Alexios or Cassandra, Greek mercenaries and descendants of a Spartan king. You can either explore the massive open world on foot or on horseback, where you'll discover locations of interest, clear out fortresses and camps, explore tombs and shipwrecks, and collect hidden treasures. You can also collect various crafting resources through exploration and hunting wildlife. Assassin's Creed Rogue is up next, and this runs great on the Steam Deck. This one is a lot less demanding graphically than the first two, and so it's able to run at a maximum graphics preset and even hold onto a consistent 60 frames per second. It's also a bit older than the other two games, so it's understandable why it's able to run this well on the Steam Deck. For this one, I like to set the resolution to max and then turn on VSync like I do with the other games. I then leave the screen's refresh rate at its maximum of 60 Hz. In Assassin's Creed Rogue, you play as Shay Cormac, who captains a ship, so sea exploration and combat are a major component of the gameplay. If you've played and enjoyed Black Flag, chances are you'll enjoy this one too. Your ship can be equipped with a bunch of new weapons and enemies can board it for combat as well. Assassin's Creed 3 Remastered is the last Assassin's Creed game that I've picked up, and this also came with the Liberation DLC for even more gameplay content. It's a remaster of one of the first Assassin's Creed games, so it comes with improved graphics and better gameplay content than the original. I've always loved the earlier Assassin's Creed games, and playing this on a deck has been great for bringing that nostalgia back. So I use the maximum resolution as usual, turn on VSync, and then set the graphics to high. Finally, I go ahead and I lock the screen's refresh rate to 40 Hz, and it's smooth gaming from there on out. The game is set in an open world and follows Connor, an assassin from colonial America, and his involvement in various events during the American Revolution. You have access to a lot of weapons like guns, swords, and the signature assassin's hidden blades. The game also comes with a lot of the old fighting and movement mechanics of the earlier games, so if you're one of those who fell in love with the series for that reason, there's chances that you'll love playing this on a deck as well. Civilization 6 is the final game on my list, and this is one game that I've got on a deck just to satisfy my urge to play a strategy game every once in a while. It's been labeled with the playable status, but like the others, that does not affect overall gameplay experience. It's easily the least demanding game I've got on the handheld and runs smoothly with graphics settings all maxed out at up to 60 frames per second. So no tweaking necessary here. The game runs easily on the Steam Deck. It's a turn-based strategy game about building empires, advancing through the different ages of history, and going head-to-head against some of the greatest leaders of the world. I think Civilization 6 is a niche game, and not everyone will find this game interesting or fun to play. Alright, so that's pretty much all the games I've got on my Steam Deck at the moment, and besides these games that I've talked about, I'm sure there's lots more to pick from on the Steam store that work great. Some other popular games like God of War, Call of Duty, and Elden Ring will run well on the Steam Deck as well, according to the Steam store at least. I'm sure I'll be picking up a lot more games as time goes on, especially now that I've got a 2TB SSD installed that I need to fill up. Go ahead and drop a comment below on any other games that you've had some good experience playing on your Steam Deck, and let's see if we can each find something new to try. That's everything for this video, you guys. I will catch you all in my next one. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It's Tommy, and I'm out, y'all.